consistent with the election. We will have for the real oversight of the administration. One of the duties of Congress under the Constitution is to provide a check and a balance against the executive, whatever that may be. And it's supposed to work the other way around also. But I think it's fair to say that the Republican Congress did not do any oversight and did not do any real checking and balancing of the administration. Now at least one house will. And we're going to, in the House, provide real oversight over a lot of different issues where there has been no oversight, no investigations, no accountability. There will be accountability. Secondly, that's a major change. And you can read in the paper what's going on about the leadership and so forth. But the new House, the new Congress takes over on January 3rd. It's interesting, by the way. The mayor or the governor, the state legislature, city council, they all get inaugurated January 1st. For some reason, Congress is January 3rd. It doesn't screw New Year's Day. In any event, we will take office on January 3rd. It will be a very different Congress. And it's very interesting, by the way, the actual number of votes for the House members, the raw vote, is the largest majority of any House election in American history. And there have been bigger landslides. The Republicans gained more seats in 2010 than Democrats gained this year because the large majority is somewhat attenuated by gerrymandering and some other factors. But it's the largest raw vote majority in American history, and the Democrats will have picked up either 40 or 41 seats, depending on that mess in the South Carolina district or North Carolina district at the moment. There are obviously major issues. I don't have to tell you what they are. The other thing is obviously, I am going to be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. It's safe to say that at this moment, the formal election will take place probably this next week. Would have been this week, but because the funeral will take place next week. We're going to have a very robust agenda where it's me and we're preparing two agendas for the committee, an oversight agenda and a legislative agenda. And for each of those, we're doing a 100 days agenda and then everything else. We will be doing, just to give an example of some things we're doing on the oversight, we'll be concentrating on the culture, or some of us feel the culture of corruption and conflicts of interest in the administration. We'll be looking into the family separation policy and other policies at the border that we think are inhuman. The undue influence by the White House on the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is supposed to be somewhat independent. The President, the administration, not supposed to tell them who to prosecute or not to prosecute, or really to interfere with those kinds of decisions at all. The Justice Department's decision not to defend the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. Normally, a law passed by Congress and signed by the President is presumed constitutional. If someone, if someone challenges the constitutionality of a law duly passed, it's the duty of the Justice Department to defend its constitutionality. That's part of the job of the President, to see that the laws are faithfully executed. The one exception to that is if the Justice Department can make a real argument that says this law is so obviously unconstitutional. There's no legal argument we can make to the contrary. We can't honestly defend its constitutionality. Short of that, they're supposed to defend its constitutionality. The Trump administration reversed the course on the Obama administration. They're not defending the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. In fact, they're attacking it. And that's clearly not the case that you can't make a rational argument. There's a strong argument, I think a winning argument that it's constitutional, but certainly a strong argument. So these are some of the oversight. We're going to have a strong legislative agenda. The first bill we'll pass will be H.R. 1, given it that title. It's a collection of different reform for elections, addressing voter suppression, election security, democracy restoration, putting limits on gerrymandering, putting limits on suppressing voters, campaign finance reform, all of that we are planning to do, hopefully to pass the House within the first 2 weeks. Whether it'll get much far in the Senate is another question, but at least we'll start the issue. We will have to deal for immigration with the Dreamers and with the temporary protection status, people from Haiti and other places, with the administration that wants to evict wholesale, with other areas of immigration reform, due process, asylum. The fact that someone who has a legitimate claim for asylum shouldn't automatically be put in detention, which is not historically what we've done, nor is it consonant, I think, with our laws or with international law. Criminal justice reform, gun violence, obviously, hate crimes. We're going to pass a major bill on essentially putting LGBTQ on the same par into the Civil Rights Act. So no questions that all the protections to the Rights Act apply to get LGBTQ. We're going to have what no one has done in a long time. That is a major antitrust agenda in the committee, because a lot of us feel that antitrust, there's too much concentration, and no one has followed at least an antitrust policy really for the last 40 years or so. And we want to ban compulsory arbitration. Which some of you know, if you get a credit card or almost anything else today, the fine print that says, if you think the company is cheating you, you can't go to court, you have to go to compulsory arbitration. And it's denying access to the courts to most people, it's denying class actions. These are some elementary things. A lot of other things will participate. This is our first 100-day agenda in the committee, at least. And obviously, the House will have a lot broader agenda. But these are some of the things we're going to be doing and concentrating on in the Judiciary Committee. And obviously, that oversight it's going to be the administration, all the things we're reading about now. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. If people want to have a couple of questions, yes.
You introduce articles of impeachment. You
That
don't have to answer.
That will wait on, depending on, the first thing you have to do, I'm glad you raised the question, forgot to mention, I don't know why I forgot to mention. The first and foremost thing we have to do is to protect the Mueller investigation.
Yes.
To make sure that, and there are a lot of things we can do on that. But after the Mueller investigation reports, then we'll see what, and there'll be other investigations too. The intelligence committee is certainly going to recall some of those witnesses who now lied, who know lied, admitted lying to the intel committee in terms of the Russia investigation. We'll have some of that too. We'll see what it goes.
What about the status of Matthew Whitaker?
Matthew Whitaker, he has agreed to come before our committee in January. For actually to be our committee and the investigations oversight jointly. Elijah Cummings is going to be the chairman of investigation oversight, and I had a phone call last week with him. And other than two things I can say about that phone call: one, that he has agreed to come to the committee in January, and two, that he swore to us that he is following all applicable protocols and procedures of the Department of Justice with reference to the Mueller investigation. That's all I can say about that. Now, that's very nice if true, but it begs one question, and that is the applicable regulations of the Department of Justice with respect to the investigation say that you can't dismiss him except for good cause. He can't. He can make a decision, or he can overrule the special counsel about indicting someone or about following a line of inquiry, but only if it's really out of the ordinary, an extraordinary decision. And he has to inform Congress of those things. But he doesn't have to inform Congress until the very end of the investigation, when it may be too late to do anything about it. So the fact that he's going to, if indeed it's true, follow the applicable rules, it's not all that comforting. It's nice, but it's not all that comforting.
Today there was a Senate hearing, and some Republican senators came out of it saying that if the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia were put in front of a jury, he'd be convicted within 30 minutes. What steps will the House take in terms of our relationship with Saudi Arabia, and should we stop selling weapons, and what else should we be doing?
Well, let me answer that in reverse order. I think we should certainly stop selling weapons, certainly stop supporting the Saudi war and the Houthis in Yemen. And we should not be involved in that, certainly not without a congressional declaration, but we should be involved in the merits on that, and we should be supporting them. What the House will do about Saudi Arabia, I don't know at this point. And the new chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee is Elliot Engel, who hails from the Bronx, not too far from here. I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversations about what we should do about it. I can only say that obviously an alliance at this point with Mohammed bin Salman is an alliance with an obvious murderer, and that has problems with that, to put it mildly. Thank you.
I'm going to have a brief report, and then we'll go into public session from the new executive officer, Chino.
Hello. Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope everybody had a happy, safe, and warm Thanksgiving. It was very cold. Did anybody go to the parade? No? I went, it was freezing. My name is Alexandra Sarubi Barcia. I'm the executive officer of the 20th Precinct. I'm a captain. Unfortunately, Captain Mallon, who's the commanding officer of the 20th Precinct, he couldn't be here today. He had a prior engagement with his family. So he sent me here instead. I'm representing the 20th Precinct. You can see me as Captain Mallon's partner. So whatever his mission is for the 20th Precinct, I just help him accomplish his goals. And I've only been there, I've been in the 20th Precinct for a little over a month. And I have to say, so far, we make a great team. We see eye to eye in just about everything. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Prior to getting to the 20th Precinct, I was the executive officer of the 30th Precinct, which covers West Harlem from 133 to 155 Street. I was there for almost a year. I was there 11 months. And I also had the opportunity of being the executive officer of Central Park Precinct. I was there for about 2.5 months prior to that. And prior to getting promoted to captain, as a lieutenant, the last command that I was in prior to promotion was the police commissioner's office. So I worked for a police commissioner. So the last time Captain Mallon was here, he discussed the overall crime was down 3%. That's still the case in the 20th Precinct. But there is one concern that we have with the crime, and that's with grand larceny. Specifically, the grand larceny specifically talking about is the attended packages. Especially around the holiday season, I just want everyone to keep in mind that I do all my Christmas shopping online. I don't have time to go out to the stores. So everything I do, I order and it gets right to my door. Just keep in mind that if you're not gonna be home, you need to maybe talk with your neighbor and see if maybe they can accept the package for you. And we can always leave instructions for UPS or FedEx and have them deliver it next door, or require a signature as well. Just so if they do come to your house and no one's home, then they won't just leave the package in front of the door. They'll try back, they'll leave you a note so you can go and pick it up at the post office if it's just regular mail. Another thing that we see is people are getting buzzed in that don't live in the building. So if you can just share this information with your neighbors and with your friends, to just be cognizant. If you're walking in the building and you see someone that's behind you and they're about to come into the building with you, if you've never seen them before, you're allowed to say, hey, do you live here? And if they don't, and if they're not visiting someone, then they shouldn't be allowed in the building. So when someone buzzes your bell, don't just open it right away. Instead, just always remember that it's easier to just ask who it is. Just so everyone knows as well, during the holiday season, we're gonna do extra patrol visits in houses of worships, and we're gonna have special attention. Special attention will be paid to the synagogues during Hanukkah as well. So just want you guys to know that as well. The next Build a Block meeting is going to be for Sector Boy, and that's gonna be on Friday, December 7th at 6:30 p.m. at the Blessed Sacrament Church, which is located on 152 West 72nd Street. So Sector Boy, that covers from 70th Street to 79th Street. So any residents from that area, you are more than welcome to attend the meeting. Again, I'll repeat the date. That's Friday, December 7th at 6:30 p.m. at the Blessed Sacrament Church on 152 West 72th Street.
It's actually 71st, yeah.
I'm sorry,
71.
is it? Okay, my apologies. Thank you.
We're now going into our public session. We'll start with Dan Slippen from the American Museum of History.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Slippen. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs at the American Museum of Natural History. Last month, I provided an update on the museum's Gilder Center project and reported that we were proceeding with internal construction after winning a substantial narrowing of the temporary restraining order that was issued. Tonight, I wanted to let you know that work is continuing, including preparing the buildings that house the museum's ichthyology, or fish collection, for demolition. Before demolition, we will relocate more than 2.8 million fish specimens. This is no easy task. And you might have noticed that right after Thanksgiving, Museum's Provost Mike Novacek sent a letter to the community addressing some misinformation that is being circulated about the project. We understand and appreciate that there are some people who do not want to see this project move forward. However, it is irresponsible for these people to disseminate false information and engage in scare tactics. Comments such as catastrophic environmental and health impacts and likening Theodore Roosevelt Park to a Superfund site or Hiroshima are just pure fear-mongering. So I wanted to briefly address some of these statements with actual facts. First, we are frequently asked why the museum cannot expand within its current footprint. Before making the decision to build this building, we undertook a comprehensive space planning initiative to maximize space available within the footprint, including substantial investments in its facilities to renovate, reorganize, and revitalize existing space. Even with these improvements, the space planning effort identified the need for the construction of an addition to the museum. Museum attendance has grown over the past 20 years from approximately 2.8 million to 5 million visitors, including an annual average of hundreds of thousands of school and camp group visitors from throughout the city. With strong growth in the museum's scientific research enterprise and educational programming, portions of the museum facilities are overcrowded, especially instructional space. Simply put, the Gilder Center will provide new opportunities in science, education, and exhibition, and address current and future challenges in a way that could not be done within the museum's existing footprint. Second, some claim that the museum is required to go through the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, also known as ULUR. This is not true. Because of New York State legislation, the way our existing lease is written, and prior court decisions, the museum has a different, but still very rigorous process to follow. Specifically, as you know well, the museum is required to receive approval from the Parks Department, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, as well as to undergo a thorough environmental review in order to build, all of which was done for the Gilder Center. And as you may recall, this process also requires the museum to come before this community board. And I'm sure you remember all the meetings we had on this project. Third, opponents claim that by allowing the museum to build in TR Park without going through ULUR, it allows the museum to build exponentially in the park. The museum cannot build at will. It must receive multiple city approvals to build in TR Park. And as you can see, from over 140 years in Theodore Roosevelt Park, the museum has been conservative in expanding, resulting in a balance between preserving parkland and maintaining a leading scientific and educational institution worthy of serving our community and visitors from all over the world. Last, opponents claim that the construction of the Gilder Center will have adverse environmental and health impacts, likening the site to a Superfund site. I hesitate to even repeat this because it is so uninformed and so untrue, but I think it is important to clarify for people who may not be familiar with the project. The potential environmental impacts were extensively studied under New York State and New York City environmental review requirements. That review concluded that there are no known risks with respect to hazardous materials that cannot be controlled through the use of measures commonly used at construction sites throughout New York City. This conclusion is corroborated by the fact that prior construction in the park has never yielded any such concerns. including as recently as the Rose Center project. That project included work in parkland not previously occupied by the Hayden Planetarium in the same site as where the Gilder Center is looked to be constructed. It also included the reconfiguration of the museum service yard, the construction of the Western Pavilion, and improvements in the north and west portions of the park. In conclusion, the judge has indicated that she is expected to rule shortly. Once the judge rules, the museum will continue to move forward with construction of the Gilder Center, and we look forward to updating you about our progress in the near future. I'm sorry I had to take your time with this today, but I felt that it was important to try to correct the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Will be Jennifer Sarr, the St. Agnes Branch Library, followed by Lindsay from West Park Theaters.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just a few announcements. If you haven't had a chance to snag one of our limited edition Knowledge is Power library cards, I recommend that you visit the St. Agnes branch sometime next week because we actually ran out of them, but we ordered some more. They're extremely popular. The message, Knowledge is Power, is extremely timely, and the card is just very bold and attractive. There's flyers in the back for more information on how to sign up for a library card, and I hope you all take advantage of that. And just a quick announcement about our DVDs. So just in case you are not on our listserv, which I hope you are, but anyway, the New York Public Library is changing the way it provides DVDs to the public. So beginning on January 28th, the library will offer browsable circulating DVD collections at 28 carefully selected hub branches. Patrons can either visit those specific branches to browse and borrow DVDs or use the catalog to browse the library's full DVD collection online. Reserved DVDs can then be delivered to any of the New York Public Library branches. So, and of course, the branch staff are always happy to show patrons how to use the catalog. And the nearest branch that will have DVDs is the Library for the Performing Arts, but there are 26 others. There are many reasons why the library decided to make this change, including the significant decreases in DVD circulation and just changes in the market. So we understand that this will be adjustment for our patrons, but we welcome your feedback and thoughts and questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, the development manager for WP Theater. For those of you who were here at last
great strength, and I believe that we made an impact at that hearing. I just want to share some facts with you that I also shared at the hearing. Number one, there is no certificate of occupancy for this building.
Oh my God.
There is a partial stop work order in place for this building. There are thousands of dollars in unpaid penalties that have not been paid by the owner of the property.
Which property?
306 West 94th Street, over here to the steps. I also had the opportunity to go on Praxis, Acris, which is a website that allows people to look at things such as. I also had the opportunity to go on Praxis. And I pulled up the mortgage that was entered into 2 years ago with the owner of the property and Capital One Bank. And that mortgage requires the consent of the lender for any leasing or encumbrance of the property. Interesting that this could go to contract without the consent of a lender. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Randy Irvin, followed by Adam Angel Galvez.
Hi, I'm here to share my great concern with the proposed homeless shelter at 306 West 94th. Placing a 200-bed shelter on a block that already has 2 facilities, Red Cross and St. Louis Rusted House, means 94th Street between West End and Riverside alone will house 500 homeless, vulnerable adults. And 94th Street is not the only block in the community that houses the homeless. Freedom House on 95th Street has a capacity for 200 homeless. How does placing almost 1,000 homeless people in a 2-block radius in a family-oriented community square with City Planning Commission's adoption of the fair share criteria? My 13-year-old daughter and I are afraid to walk on the block where we live. I demand that the city halt this ill-conceived project.
Followed by Dorothy Wilbur.
My name is Adam Angel, and I live in 306 West 94, between West End and Riverside. For 30 years, this is the third time this building tried to make a shelter where I live. I think, and to be honest, it's not fair, the word fair, to put up one more shelter there. If anybody wrong for that, any seat in this neighbor, or anybody can tell me very clear, to have a child and grandson, and personally me is scared to walk, even when I go to the morning to my job, it's not possible to put one more shelter there. If we want to try to help these people, let's make a project for long term. Thank you very much.
Paula Bassoff.
I see Darren
Next is Paula Bassoff.
I see Darren as well.
Next is Kathy Manning.
I represent Amanda Walk. I live on 95th Street. Unfortunately, I hoped to bring tonight, but we couldn't get them in time. The crime stats. We asked the 24th precinct to give us crime stats that reflect crimes that were committed by the shelter residents, specifically Freedom House, but all of the shelters on 94th and 95th. We could not get them in time to the meeting, but I will submit them when I receive them. It's true. It's just ridiculous. There is always a police car on our block. There's always a police car at, I forget the address, but at Freedom House. And just to move them from Freedom House to 94th Street does not make sense. I don't know what else I can say, but I will submit those.
Thank you. I just want to point out, please listen carefully, but it did not come before our, we're an advisory board, and it did not come before our board for advice. So, our next speaker is Kathy Fanning, followed by Andy. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, MA. Next is,
Take all that time, we'll do some of it.
it's not Epstein,
The minutes.
They have to worry about.
followed by Bonnie Epstein.
Am I speaking to my wife, Bonnie Epstein? May I?
Yes, you may.
Bonnie, you go first.
Good evening, my name is Bonnie Epstein, and my family and I have lived on West 94th Street between Riverside and West End Avenue for 40 years. We raised our children on that block. Many members of CB7 know me for my years of testifying in favor of SROs and affordable supportive housing on our block. But this is different. We read about the Freedom House move in Councilmember Rosenthal's October 5th email newsletter. It stated, quote, "The facility, which houses approximately 200 homeless adult families, will be moving from West 95th Street to West 94th Street later this year. It will also be managed by a new provider, Praxis. What is an adult family? How many actual people are included in an adult family? And what is Praxis?" It was clear that someone had made a huge mess on West 95th Street, and instead of cleaning it up, voting the Freedom House move. We will not, we cannot agree to this move. It would destroy the fragile balance of life and safety that currently struggles to exist on our block. After years of publicly advocating for supportive and affordable housing on our block, including membership in the Rustin House CAB, the Rustin House is not a homeless shelter. It is permanent supportive housing.
Thank you so much.
After years of supporting this housing, we say no. No to Freedom House.
CB. Followed by Dylan Heck.
Okay, I don't represent anybody. I'm just here as a private citizen. Let me say, I'm not against the homeless shelters. I've got no objection to housing the poor. What I do object to is warehousing the mentally ill. My mother was a superintendent of Bellevue in the 1990s, and she warned me about warehousing, about stuffing mentally ill people into a building with a weak supply of Thorazine and no supervision. Now, I'm 6'3" and like 235 pounds. I'm usually safe from crazy people, but I've had some bad experiences with them. I volunteered at the West Side Community Garden. I had a bad experience with a mentally ill drunk. I got him out of the property in 5 minutes. He stood in front of an apartment building for 15 minutes and scared away the residents. And the police couldn't handle it because there were another incident at the camp.
Followed by Jessica Spiegel.
Hello. Hello, my name is Dylan Heck. I'm a resident of Riverside and 94th Street, and I don't know Aaron, but I believe our interests are generally aligned. But one thing I would just like to reiterate that's sort of already been brought up is there's a lot of confusion as to why Freedom House was closed. Or not confusion, obviously there's a lot of problems with it. The confusion is why they moved the problem one block over. Specifically, was it closed because it was close to an elementary school? Well, putting it right in between an elementary school and a Montessori school does not seem like a productive solution to a problem with residents. I've witnessed countless drug transactions, violence, general just unsanitary situations. And like the gentleman before me, I'm a pretty big person. I'm pretty safe myself, but there are other residents that aren't so lucky, especially one of my neighbors who was just recently punched.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Next is Trustee
Hi, so I live on 95th Street, and I know Aaron's gonna talk a lot about the shelter.
Okay, to the mic.
Sorry, and so I went to the meeting, and they were saying, oh, it's gonna move to 94th Street, but now it's not just moving, it's getting bigger. And my concern is, nobody seems to be answering what's gonna happen on 95th Street when they all move. And now it seems like it's gonna be another one, so now we're not just increasing it when we move it to 94th Street, but on 95th Street, we're gonna have another one. And it's like, who do we talk to then about this? Because it seems like it's just going through and nobody's doing anything or changing anything. And we're going to these meetings and it seems like nobody's listening. So I just would like to, we could talk about 95th Street as well.
We will talk to DHS. Linda Goldstein, followed by Jesse Miller.
I cede my time to Aaron.
Jesse, I see my time. Karen. Randy Miller
I cede my time to Aaron.
and Deborah Whitfield.
I cede my time to Aaron.
Okay, next is Aaron. Okay, would you like to give your record?
Here's my speech. Another copy? Maybe less. Yeah, maybe less. But, we interrupt here. I got this. Okay. Our neighbors are here tonight, united in opposition to open what is a new shelter at the Alexander, 306 West 94th Street. While we're not on the agenda for this board, we should be. The very rushed, secretive way this plan was hatched makes the case for community board hearings and review more compelling. Let's begin with the selection of the Alexander for shelter. A similar plan was rejected by this board and public officials including Gil Brewer, Scott Stringer, Charlie Rangel, and Melissa Mark Viverito in January 2011. Speaking on the steps of the Alexander, Congressman Rangel called out the city for citing a facility in a neighborhood that was already home to numerous facilities. Nothing is different today. In fact, maybe it's worse. The 300 block of West 94th Street has both the Red Cross shelter in the building adjoining the Alexander and the Lanterns St. Louis Rusted House. The mayor's 2016 homelessness plan promises to keep shelter clients in their home borough and to, quote, redistribute 90 shelters throughout the 5 boroughs. How fair can this promised redistribution be when you open a shelter on a block that is already doing more than most communities to house facilities that serve the homeless? In many ways, the Freedom House shelter that is closing on 95th Street itself
should have been set up in the home borough of its residents from day one. The New York Times was filled with articles about the political lobbying that gave birth to it. The fair share analysis created 9 months later for Freedom House touts its proximity to the B-15 bus. This bus serves Southeast Brooklyn, and that is where this shelter should have been sited. That is closer to Freedom House residents' home neighborhoods. It's an important consideration given by the mayor's 2016 report. It makes family visits easier. We consider the proposed placement of a shelter at the Alexander a threat to the safety of the residents of West 94th Street. Putting another shelter a block away is not a redistribution. The combination of the Alexander population with the existing Red Cross shelter and the very problematic population at St. Louis Ruston will compromise the safety of this block. Already, the Neighborhood Association, neighborhood in the 90s, has raised $100,000 to establish a private guard service through Cambridge Security. The guard service patrols the area between Riverside and Broadway, 93rd to 95th Street. The creation of the service is a direct reaction to the compromised quality of life and safety caused by Freedom House and the St. Louis and the Red Cross facilities. The establishment of a larger shelter through praxis at the Alexander is more likely to compromise our safety. Our Cambridge guards coordinate with several larger buildings in the neighborhood. They file reports, and the reports have helped us connect the dots. The problems are coming from these facilities. Some of my neighbors have been physically attacked. Many women have been menaced on the street. Compounding this is the void that closing Freedom House leaves on 95th Street. The owners are looking for another program after they repair their property. We have no faith that the city won't site yet another facility there in the near future. We served for 2 years on the Community Advisory Board of Freedom House, but the CAB has not been allowed to meet since January. Instead, this crazy backroom deal was created to open a shelter on a block that already has done its fair share. That is why we need to go back to the community board review. The city cannot be trusted to follow the city charter. The city cannot be trusted to follow its own homeless shelter reform plans. Choosing the Alexander is revisiting a mistake. A thorough review of the violations in this building, and we heard from Marina Higgins earlier on this, would reveal the results of midnight renovations. Walls, wires, bathrooms removed and installed. Alexander has had more makeovers than the Lake Joan River. But little of this work was done under permit. This is scary. Let's consider who we're dealing with. Allie Sharf. A child died outside the Esplanade because the certified work wasn't done. I'm asking that the community board issue a request for a thorough cellar and ceiling walkthrough by the DOB, which is the Department of Building, the FDNY, and HPD. The building does not even have its own heating plant. It was ripped out. Yet, a check of information on file at HPD shows no record of this removal. Let's use the community board's powers to invite the scrutiny this owner deserves. It only will raise more questions about this site selection process. Let's do this before somebody else dies. I'm also asking that given the concerns of fair share and the crazy siting process, that the community board consider a resolution that future sightings be brought before the community board for its review. Just as Brandeis said, sunshine is the best disinfectant. Thank you for listening. All those who agree with what I'm saying, please stand up. I'd like everybody to stand up if you really don't want this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We are now going to,
Roberta, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Aaron?
Yeah.
2 questions. Where is this proposal in the process? What's the status?
That's a very good question. Thank you. Okay, that comes in here. Oh, hello, testing?
Yeah. Yep.
I like the other one better, but, okay. At least I don't have to look at notes now. We were given a notice of an update, and the public appeared on October 4th at PS 75. We were not really told that this kind of radical change was going on with the facility. We found out through newspapers and stuff that there was a city record, city contracts hearing on October 18th. We went there. We raised an objection. Surprise, surprise. 4 weeks later, they resubmitted the contract without changing a comma. So the contract was resubmitted on November 15th. And we were asked by a representative, Mox, to submit our written review of this. I was in touch with the controller's office today. They say they have no record of a contract submitted, but the DHS, HRA, Department of Social Services, whatever banner they're flying, sometimes submits the contracts after they move people in. Again, we have a very lawless environment. I was talking to Roberta earlier tonight, and possibly the Land Use Committee, if they're willing to entertain this, might want to have some sort of hearing on this. I think that as long as we keep this alive, the more people that look at this thing, the worse it looks. But let's all see what's going on. You have a lawless landlord who has made so many renovations. I mean, I joke about Joan Rivers, but literally there is a huge difference. There's two different buildings. There's the one that's on file with HPD, and that's the one that exists today. And it was not certified. It was not reviewed by the Department of Buildings. This is a dangerous situation, guys. We should not be putting up with it.
My second question is, what, if anything, are our elected representatives doing at this time?
Whoa! I don't know where, well, the controller's office gave us a lot of helpful suggestions, so God bless Scott Stringer. I don't really have anything positive to say about Helen Rosenthal's involvement. What?
She's for it.
She's for it. Helen Rosenthal is quoted in the Westside Rag as saying that she tentatively approves it. Well, she's basically been the midwife for this thing, because we had a CAB. We met at Community Board 7, and we were trying to fix the problems in the facility, but we were cut off after January. And I have loads of text. I went back and forth with Helen for months and months and months. Can we have a meeting? Can we have a meeting? She said they're bullshit artists. We shouldn't have a meeting. I said, well, that's the point. You're rewarding them by not having the meeting. You have to be on top of it. You have to know what's going on. I can't say where the idea came from, but the fact is, Helen Rosenthal is supporting this, and in my humble opinion, she has thrown our block and 95th Street under the bus, and this is unacceptable.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to say a few
Here,
words.
here, here.
And I am, people from Helen's office, people from Gail's office attended many CAB meetings on Freedom House. And we're very frustrated because the provider would come to the meetings and say, oh yes, we're going to look into such and such, and the following month they would come back and say, oh, we didn't have a chance to look at such and such. It turned out that they didn't have enough support staff. They didn't have enough staff. So it was fruitless. It wasn't a decision just by Helen. It was a decision across the board that until we could get responses that made sense, having meetings where we got the runaround every single meeting was not productive. The Veterans House, which is next door to Freedom House, is run by Bailey House and by Harlem United. And in the 2 years I've been attending the meetings, it's almost a kumbaya moment when we meet with them. The veterans are involved, the Bailey House people are involved, the Harlem United are involved. If someone makes a suggestion, someone follows up on it. If there's a problem, somebody makes the adjustment. The 24th precinct is always there. there's always been somebody from Brewer's office, and it's just been the perfect way for a community action advisory board to work. So I don't know what the board can do at this time, except to talk to DHS and to talk with some people to see. Louisa has looked at the fair share criteria.
My question is about that, to the gentleman who just spoke. Isn't the citing governed by the fair share criteria, and doesn't the fair share criteria prevent?
Sorry.
Okay, doesn't the fair share criteria govern this kind of facility, the siting of this kind of facility, and prevent four facilities on one block?
Question.
I'd like to hear that. Okay, what we're going to do now is, to make it simpler, we're going to put this on the land use agenda. The meeting is.
Can you at least answer that one question?
The meeting is the 19th, and we will have a full discussion at that time. We'll invite all the parties to participate. Nikki had her hand up. I'm going to take one more question. I'm going to take one more question from Nikki.
Please give the answer to the last question.
There are a lot of questions. We're going to take it up on the 19th. We'll invite housing to join, but it's going to be at land use.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I've been involved in this fight for at least 30 years. First of all, the fair share, yes, this does not fall under fair share. I did a quick check on my way over here tonight. There's at least 10 shelters between 94th and 98th from Broadway to Riverside. 10 shelters, at least. That is beyond any kind of reasonable fair share. It's saturated. That's number one. Number two, there is a very problematical issue with both buildings, whether it's 94th and 95th Street. The Sharp family who owns the Alexander has a long history of not caring for their buildings. They put people in danger, and we shouldn't be allowing anything like that. That's number one. Number two, they're just in it for the money. I understand that they're real estate people, but you also have to have a certain moral responsibility, which they don't have. The Praxis people who are running this shelter have a troubled history also. They got rid of their top management because of financial funny business. We should be vetting the people who do this. I was involved with 2643 Broadway, which is started out as a MICA project, that's mentally ill, chemically addicted. It is now permanent housing because the people who stayed there worked out very well. We did a lot of work to find a good provider. I was the chair of that board for 15 years of the 20 years that it's been running. There are ways to do this and do it well and do it intelligently and to keep the community safe and keep the people, many of whom are very frightened and very fragile, to keep them safe. But right now, this is ridiculous. What I'm going to do is propose a motion that the board consider, and that is that be it resolved that CB7 is opposed to the movement of Freedom House to West 94th Street. We ask that DHS not move this population and work within the framework of that building to cure any issues there. Furthermore, we strongly protest the end run done around CB7 by DHS and others.
Thank you.
Should go through committee though. No, it doesn't.
How timely is it? I just want to remind the board that this board stopped a shelter in 2007, 2006.
Yeah.
It was, the board came up with a steering committee 15-0 vote. We went to a press conference that our elected officials didn't show up to. They met in the middle of the night with DHS and moved people in, 200 people. Remember that? And we went and stopped it.
We met with DHS and everybody else, and they were appalled at how
Right. I'm going to take three more comments, and then we're going to call a vote.
Yeah, I just want to say this. In 2011, we all witnessed what was going on 94th Street after the fact. We weren't told. I got a call from Marina Higgins telling me they were moving furniture onto 94th Street, which is building in the middle of the night. Community board wasn't even apprised of it. Our elected officials were apprised of it. This is comparable to this situation. It's not that we don't want to support affordable housing, lower income housing. We do with the Upper West Side, and we want to end shelters where needed. But if you're talking about one block with 3 shelters, a school, and 95th Street, and of course where Freedom House was, that is going to become another shelter. 4 shelters, 2 blocks. It's untenable. And I think that as a community board, we really need to send out a letter immediately before we do anything. Get something out.
We have a resolution that will go out immediately.
Okay.
We're going to have 3 more comments. It's going to be Ethel Kent and Rich Robbins.
I do support Nikki's resolution, but there are 2 or 3 other things that we could be doing now. First of all, the fair share criteria are widely available. That doesn't mean that it's going to work here, but at least this community board, and I'll send it out because they are worthy of study and then battle. And so they're all available, and we need to analyze them to see what the fair share criteria apply to. They may not apply to every one of these buildings, but we have to do that as a threshold point. So in order to be able to say Community Board 7 is protesting because the fair share criteria are not being applied correctly. Secondly, and quickly, I never want to put more burdens on the office, but I did hear from Aaron and others about what you are alleging are unlawful and unsafe conditions in the buildings, and you are concerned about it for the residents and others. So in that case, I think that the community board office and others should make every effort to get the buildings department and other relevant agencies, which the community board could do together with the elected representatives all together, going to these agencies and saying, this is what we need to do. And thirdly and lastly, I listened, and years ago, I worked a lot at the SROs there and learned a lot as well as helped to some degree. I just want to say the third thing is I listened to Aaron and others about the effectiveness and of Roberta of a community advisory board in other instances. So those are examples that are important. This sounds, I don't understand why, abusive, dilatory or I'm not sure in the shifting of money. But we have to hold up those examples to say, look, Community Board 7 has done it well, but the community is not going to be abused, and nor are the people in the place. So I would suggest a task force of committees. I do not think that the Land Use Committee alone is correct, although obviously it could be involved, but you do need the Housing Committee and the Social Services, and to a lesser degree Land Use. This needs to be set up quickly, because this has been something that has been bad for some time, but every other person described better experiences that the community board engaged in, and we've got to do it now and not be dilatory, and neither should the elected officials be.
I'm opposed to Mickey's resolution. This feels to me like a rush to judgment. Fellow members of the board. We're talking about passing a resolution opposing this and then convening committees that are going to look into it. It seems to me that's backwards. We've heard from one side for 20 minutes of testimony. We have our elected representative who is in favor of this. I'd like to hear why she's in favor of it. And we haven't heard from the city. So I think we should table this.
Excuse me, we have one more public. Excuse me, I called on one more person. Rich Robbins is going to speak, and then we're going to call the vote.
Could we also have the resolution read again?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, thanks.
So I do support the resolution. I think there are two other things. One is I think it is an imminent issue, so we should put out a resolution quickly, followed with committee. And I recognize Ken's point. I think it is backwards, but given the timeliness and the concern, and that feeds off another issue, which I think needs to be addressed, which is given that there's a bad actor, the building has over $13,000 in unpaid fines. The bad actor was actually indicted by the city for the issue on 74th Street. I think that, I don't know what the answer is, and I think we should have an opinion on it, but I think there should be some criteria that prevents bad actors from doing repeat business in the city, and especially in our district.
So the resolution, as it's written right now, is be it resolved that CB7 is opposed to the movement of Freedom House to West 94th Street. We ask that DHS not remove this population and work within the framework of that building to cure any issues there. Furthermore, we strongly protest the end run done around CB7 by DHS and I couldn't reach other elected officials. Yeah, I'm not sure if that really covers what we want to say, but
we want to keep them there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do we want to keep?
I don't know that we want to keep them there.
No, I agree with that.
I think we want to
modify.
modify. Nikki, is it okay?
No, the people at 90.
Wait, excuse me. It's board is. Nikki, can we, as a friendly, make this little change that we oppose the movement of Freedom House, and not ask them not to move it, but to work with the community board about a better location. Okay. So, well, keeping them there in a place that has not been appropriate for them, and it's not worked for them. There are problems with the space. There's no.
A friendly amendment, could we say we're against the movement and we're in favor of working with the community board to come up with a solution to the existing problems?
Yes, that's much better,
yeah.
So we demand that they work with the community board.
Yes, and insist that they work with them.
That we insist we demand.
And I will also set up a task force this month.
But a very important thing is being left out here. Freedom House acts as an emergency shelter, so those people are not vetted who go there. and it's directly across the street from the school, so oftentimes.
No, we understand that.
Okay.
We totally get
Totally
that.
get that.
No, we totally get
The
that.
resolution says we'll address the problems currently.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah, I
gonna
like that.
call the question as it has been rewritten. And people, only board members are eligible to vote. It's gonna be number 16 on your voting sheet. Okay, all those in favor of the new revised resolution?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
All those opposed?
2,
All those abstaining?
2, 3. Not eligible.
Not eligible.
What's the title of the resolution? What's it called?
I'm calling it Freedom House Move.
Call it West 94th Street. So it's number 16, West 94th Street.
306.
306. We just need a number for the Freedom House. Our next speaker is going to be, or he's from Speaker Johnson's office.
Oh, we're still in public session.
Yes, we are.
Technically speaking.
Lori Martha, Speaker for Johnson's office. Well, a slightly different topic here. On Thursday, December 6th, our office, in partnership with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, will be holding an accessibility clinic and presentation for businesses to learn how they can become fully accessible. We invite all local businesses to attend. It's at 34th Street, partnership, 1065 Avenue of the Americas, Suite 2400, 2430. I have flyers in the back for you. Yes. And also very quickly, we have a toy drive coming up, or actually it's in process right now. You can drop off your toy at our office at 224 West 30th Street from now until December 14th. Speaker is Ms. Santos, followed by Caitlin from Excuse me, our meeting is still going on.
Hi everyone, my name is Sadia Santos. I'm from Senator Serrano's office. I'm a community liaison there. Just wanted to come and say hello. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. I don't know if anyone heard anything from the New York Post today, but there was actually a gelatinous substance, I think was the term used by the congressman. There was a package sent to Congressman Serrano's office for about 3 hours. It incorrectly said Senator Serrano's office. So we had a fun afternoon of, hey, why is your office open? I thought you would be closed. And I was like, it wasn't us. Anyways, it all worked out okay. So far, it looks like no one was harmed, and it was the New York Post article is corrected to be the congressman's office, not the senator's. The election just passed. We now have a majority, Democratic majority in the New York State Senate. Senator Serrano is very happy to be serving as the chair of the Senate Majority Conference. So that's going to be a new leadership role for him. And his main legislative priorities going forward include affordable housing and removing the vacancy bonus for landlords to be able to hike up rent in New York City. We always have constituent hours going on around the Upper West Side. If anyone wants to come and talk to us, our office is always open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Phone number is 212-828-5829. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Captain, wait a minute. We just enjoyed Senator Wellman.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you.
And congratulations on having a Democrat.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you very much. Yes, Stacey McGrath, well, happy to represent you in the Senate majority. Last time I was here, I was in the minority. Look what I just want to say in terms of, can you hear me? In terms of priorities, I know my, no wonder, this is not a seeks that. Secondly, on gun laws, New York State has fallen behind other states in the region, particularly in one area called extreme risk protection orders. That's legislation of which I'm the co-prime sponsor, and it would allow an individual or law enforcement to go to court and petition a judge if they know a gun is in the hand of someone who might hurt themselves or others. Connecticut has very successfully implemented an ERPO, which is what it's called, and actually has reduced suicide by about 20% in that state. Of course, our rent laws are up for renewal, and we have to not just renew them, but strengthen them and get rid of things like vacancy decontrol and preferential rent and vacancy bonuses and MCIs that never end. That's all at the top of our agenda. And then on the LGBTQ front, I'm the only openly LGBTQ member of the Senate, so it is my solemn responsibility to make certain that we pass a transgender human rights law, which New York has not passed. It banned so-called gay conversion therapy, which New York has never even had a hearing on, and make certain that we provide for homeless youth and our elders. So it's going to be a big agenda, not to mention the $175 billion budget, your taxpayer dollars at work. So we've got our work cut out for it. Needless to say, I'm going to be listening to you in terms of new bills and priorities for the budget season. So thank you very much, and thanks for your support. Yes, you know, it's interesting. I support that and have been a co-sponsor of that. Advocates at this point are saying that they're ambivalent about whether it should be repealed or not. You know, there's a housing conference this weekend that's being sponsored by housing conservation coordinators and other tenant groups. So I'll be interested to hear whether they're thinking with the Democratic Senate, maybe they're better off in Albany than in the city council. That's what they've been telling me. So it is a priority of mine, but advocates are at the moment divided over whether they really want to pursue it or not.
There are two more questions very quickly. Rich, and then.
Go ahead, Mark. Thanks. This board passed a resolution last month about the Childhood Victim Access to Justice Act. I'm wondering what you think the chances are now that we have the majority.
Thank you. That's another bill that I sponsor, Mark. And I think it's incredibly important that we allow adult survivors of child sexual abuse the opportunity to sue their abusers and the institutions that may have protected them in civil court. And that's what the Child Victims Act would do. Andre Stewart Cousins, I'm happy to say, is the prime co-sponsor of my bill, and it has virtually the entire support of the Democratic Senate, as well as every challenger who ran against IDC members and Republicans and won. So I'd say the chances are pretty good.
Excellent, thank you.
Rich, and then.
Soon-to-be Speaker Pelosi said the first item on her agenda is going to be voting rights. And that's something where New York State has been the worst or among the worst nationally, really sending a bad signal that even though we're considered a blue progressive state, we have really bad voting rights. Could that be something that's really high on the agenda?
It's one of the top 5, and I neglected to mention both that and the Child Victims Act. But in Andre Stewart Cousins' comments publicly, she has said that voting rights are in dire need of reform. We need to have early voting in New York. 35 million Americans voted early in this last election, but not a single New Yorker because we don't have it. Pre-registration or registration at 16, automatic voter registration. When you engage with the city or state office, you should be automatically registered unless you opt out. And of course, redistricting, we can improve on that. The reason that some of these Republicans held out for so many years, even though we have in some places a 5-to-1 Democratic advantage over Republicans, is because of the way districts are drawn. One of my colleagues likes to say that it takes her 4 hours, she represents the North Country, to drive from one side of her district to the other because of the way it's been drawn. Oh, I tell her I represent both the east and west side of Manhattan, and sometimes it takes me 4 hours. That's why we need congestion pricing.
Speaking of that, this may be covered by the Erskine law, but what about home rule for managing our streets?
Boy, I couldn't agree more. You should not have to go to Albany to lower the speed limit or get a speed camera. I hope to pick up late Senator Peralta's bill on speed safety cameras in front of schools. I really feel strongly about that. An accident occurred outside of my daughter's public school on West 11th Street a couple of years ago. Someone was seriously injured. There's no speed camera there. And we need them universally, not just 20 a year approved by the state legislature. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
April, I apologize, I should have called on you earlier. So, April Adams is our new liaison from the Office Office. We're thrilled to have her.
Good evening, y'all. Well, as she said, I'm the new community liaison. I'm very excited to be here with you all tonight. I'll be representing boards 7 and 9. So please introduce yourself, stop by. I just got business cards today, so I actually have them for you instead of scraps of paper. All right, so I just have a quick report for y'all from Gail Brewer's office. Community board membership applications are now open, so you can visit the website if you are interested in actually joining one of the boards such as CB7. And those applications,
some of us need to reply.
and some of y'all need to apply, and you'll be getting my email soon. So, applications will be due on Friday, February 8th of next year. We are hosting a diaper drive. If you all are not aware, it's kind of a barrier for a lot of people to send their children to daycare. If you don't have diapers, they will kind of turn you away and you risk missing work. So we have an annual diaper drive, and you can drop new sealed boxes of diapers off at either our office downtown at 1 Center Street or our northern Manhattan office. Cultural tourism grants are now open. We always support the arts and culture here in Manhattan. So you can get those on our website as well. And those applications will be accepted through Friday, January 18th, 2019. And this program is for anybody that's open to throw any particular performances, festivals. It's all for cultural arts nonprofit organizations. So please go to our website to apply. We are starting a couple of workshops ending gender-based violence. So we're going to be working with the Teen Relationship Abuse Prevention Program, or RAP. And we're going to be working with them monthly to offer workshops to teens throughout the borough. And the first workshop will be held December 12th at our Northern Manhattan office, which is located at 431 West 125th Street. And you can learn more about that in our newsletter. If you have not subscribed to Gail Brewer's newsletter, it's a wealth of information. It comes out monthly, so please be sure to subscribe to that. We want to give you all a quick update on Rikers. As you all know, they kind of went back and forth with changing the location, but they're closing Rikers down, and they decided to do borough-based jails across the city. They kind of went back and forth with the location, but the mayor's office has decided that it's now back at the Manhattan Detention Complex, which is the Tombs at 125th White Street. We do have a Rikers task force through the Manhattan Borough President's Office. We'll be meeting next week. We meet quite often to make sure that the community's needs are met, the residents of Chinatown, anybody interested in reforming the criminal justice system, architects, we have everyone involved. So we're definitely in it for the community. We did just release an M96 bus testimony. They were planning on making the M96 a select bus service. However, the MTA decided to delay making any sort of changes or upgrades to the buses until 2021. We are vehemently opposed to this action, and we have said so. We have begun testifying this week, and they hope to make a resolution sometime next week as well. So they'll give us an update. And lastly, we had a success with the Department of Sanitation. We had a couple of complaints on 71st and West End with trash proliferation. If you all do not know, the Department of Sanitation began taking away certain litter baskets and trash cans from certain blocks because they said that people were abusing the trash cans by putting in household waste and the like. So luckily we were able to meet with the Department of Sanitation, and we actually got the resolve. So we got those trash cans back. So,
Excellent.
and that's it.
Hi everybody, I'm Caitlin from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. I have just a couple updates and announcements. We're holding our annual holiday party on Wednesday, December 19th at Hargrave. And so everyone in the community is invited. Just give us a call so we know you're coming. We can RSVP you. This week, the Assemblymember's bill that will provide menstrual hygiene products free to individuals incarcerated in state correctional facilities will be signed into law, which is very exciting. So we're looking forward to that being enacted. And our other update was also on garbage cans. You can feel free to reach out to our office if you've noticed that your block is missing garbage cans, and we are happy to connect with DSNY and ask for an inspection and for those to be put back on your block. Thank you.
And last but not least, is Jillian from Helen Rosenthal's office.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Julian from Councilman Helen Rosenthal's office. I just want to go over a few of our ongoing and upcoming events in district. We're currently holding a toy drive for children 13 and under at our district office. We're also going to be providing child protectors for stovetop knobs, along with smoke detector batteries if you guys are in need of them at our district office as well. We're also going to be hosting a housing clinic tomorrow night at the Goddard Riverside Center from 6 to 8 p.m. this Thursday. We're also going to be hosting the Department of Finance in our office from 2 to 5 p.m., helping with financial cases for constituents such as spree or any other financial questions you may have for the Department of Finance. I also want to let you know that the New York Legal Assistance Group will be having its van on West 87th Street on December 13th. And again, all of the flyers with all this information we found over there where you signed in.
That brings us down to our business session.
All right, we have three fairly quick resolutions. All of them involve fiscal culture establishments. The first is a gym called Flywheel in the basement of the Beacon Hotel. It exclusively does spinning and holds classes of up to 50 people, but it's in the basement and it's totally soundproof. Any approval? Any questions? All those in favor?
Why are first good?
Second one, opposed? Abstain? One cause? Okay, second resolution is a renewal of the existing permit. There's been no changes in the operation, and we've received no complaints. Mark?
It's on your sheet as Flywheel also, but it's actually Crunch.
It's Crunch. It's on 83rd between Amsterdam and Columbus. All those in favor?
Yes, it actually is in the building that used to be the postal annex. I'm recusing myself.
26, 27, 29, 30, 31.
I have a contractual relationship with them.
Abstain? One.
Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, there's recusal?
Abstention with causes.
What do you get?
I'm not voting for cause.
Same.
Okay. The third requires a little discussion. This is also a facility that qualifies as physical culture student. The main exercise there is the use of a dance bar. It's on Broadway, just about a half a block from the community board office on the west side of the street. The main issue there is that while it's a storefront establishment, a large part of the storefront is covered with a screen on the window that does not allow you to see into the facility except at night when there's lights inside. The committee felt that it wasn't what a storefront should be, especially on Broadway. And we've had this problem with a number of establishments, they're all up and down Columbus between 86 and 96. The attorney for the applicant was here tonight, and he's agreed to go back and talk to the designer and see if we can reach some kind of compromise. But he wanted us to vote tonight in any event, so the resolution would be to disapprove without prejudice to renewal on a satisfactory change in the storefront aspect of the facility. Any questions?
Richard, I have a question. So is this a matter of branding? What was the exact issue with the screen? Were you not allowed, or you
The issue with the screen is that you can't, it presents, it's not a storefront. It's really just an advertisement for the facility.
So the reason they have it is so if you're working out in there, it's not people.
You can't see it.
It's not an easy problem because the patrons don't want people gawking at them while they're dancing or at the bar. On the other hand, nobody forced them to rent this space, which is a storefront. So we're going to try to work it out with the applicant. He seems to be in good faith about it, but right now, the way it's currently configured, we can't do it. He's probably going to come back to us early, either late December, early January. We're going to be in touch in the meantime and see if we can work it out. We need to look at it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's occupied. It's not going to be. All those in favor?
This is just disapproval.
Subject to.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Opposed?
Abstaining? Because? It's a little rough.
You abstaining? Okay, so will you opposed again? Opposed, please? 1, 2, 3. 3 opposed, abstaining? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you.
27, 3, 4, 0.
Sorry about that.
Jerry.
slides. Can't work without you. It's like having from Costello.
Operation comes to a halt. Operation comes to a halt.
Okay, the first application, this is resolution number 4, is an application at 508 Columbus Avenue. This is where it is now. This is actually a rendering of what the storefront is going to look like. And the storefront itself has already been approved at the staff level. Landmarks, this is an application for an accessible ramp, which, as you can see by the picture, will be, the base will be concrete to match the sidewalk. The railing will be tubular steel painted black. The committee felt that in the context of the requirements for accessible ramps, that this one was appropriate and approved it unanimously.
Is this going to be a restaurant or retail space?
It says hamburgers. So I assume they're going to be to eat as opposed to hamburgers.
Okay, got it. No, the only reason I asked, you see, now with the ramp in the front,
Yeah.
when they come to us for a cafe, they're gonna have to, they'll be restricted by, well, they're restricted to 9 feet anyway, but.
Yeah,
the ramp
it's going to be
comes out.
awkward for one thing.
It's like Oma on 80th.
Exactly.
and Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that work? Oma work. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oma work.
Okay. Jerry, you can skip to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. Call the question. All in favor?
1, 2.
Are they required to have this ramp? Yes. Well, if they do a certain amount of renovation to the building, they're required to have it. The question always is, have they done renovations between 1991 and now that would have triggered the requirement? And there are predatory lawyers and plaintiffs that run around. Sued simply to sell it for the attorney's fees, which doesn't actually provide any kind of handicap accessibility. So it's a real bad situation. So smart folks.
The next application at 121 West 88th Street. This is a brownstone, a mid-block brownstone. There. These are the historical tax photo and the historical photo. This is a multi-part application for facade restoration and modifying some openings on the front facade, a rear yard addition, and a rooftop addition. We'll take them one at a time. Let's see, the front facade work that's being proposed is, which we consider all positive, is removing some aluminum 1/1 windows and through the wall, air conditioning units, infilling those openings with sandstone to match the facade. There will be new windows installed. These will be wood, painted a dark color, and the main entrance to the facade is now going to be moved from the side to the center, which is consistent with what it was historically. So
we had no problem at all with the front facade. The next part of the application that the next part of the application that we considered, go to the next one, Jim, was the rooftop, well, excuse me, the rear yard addition. Let's see. This actually, the building is on the north side of 88th between Amsterdam and Columbus. Normally, the rear yards, the rear facades of these buildings are not visible from anywhere except within the donuts. However, in this case, opposite these rear facades is the schoolyard for PS 166. So from 89th Street, you can see the rear. These are the rear of the brownstones on the north side of 88. You see them through the schoolyard. And so since they are visible, they require more than the normal scrutiny for rear yard additions. This rear yard addition that's being proposed is an extension, but only 3 feet out from the existing facade. It's a full width addition, and there's an existing part addition now, an L addition, that's being pulled back so that the entire rear facade will be only 3 feet out, and that will comply with the 30-foot setback from the rear property line. The proposal, go ahead, Gary. This is another view looking through from the schoolyard. These are the fences along the south side of the schoolyard. This is, if you can see it, if you're looking at it from 89th Street, if you look to the brownstone to the left of where you're looking, there's already a partial rooftop, a partial rear yard addition of the same on the right, which you can't see through the trees. Jerry? This is a rendering of the proposal for the rear facade. We were fine with everything, including the punch-out windows, the terrace, except for this area, which is a double height rear wall, if you will, of glass and thin metal framing. In brief, the consensus of the members of our committee was that there was too much glass, it was too glaring, and since like, as I said before, unlike other rear yard facades, it's visible from the public way, in this case, West 89th Street. Go ahead, Jerry. So just keep it in the back of your head that for the rear facade, we did not think that this portion of it was appropriate, and our resolution will reflect that.
I think that's it.
We still have the rooftop.
But I think that's the extent of the drawings.
Yeah, we have the, okay. Well, yeah, this, in addition, it's this one, right? Yeah. The third part of the proposal was for a rooftop addition. Part of the proposal was to lower the top floor slightly in order to keep the rooftop addition to fairly modest proportions, and it's pretty much even with rooftop additions to these. I'm sorry?
You should show the section.
I don't think we have the proposed section.
I don't recall if we have. Jerry, you want to go back one?
That's the existing, right?
That's existing. I don't think we have it.
Did you have it yet?
Yeah,
It's not visible from 88th Street.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the rear elevation of the proposed rooftop addition now. This would be looking from 89th Street, again, because of the schoolyard, it's visible from 89th. It is not visible from 88th at all. You have a question?
I do have a question.
Certainly.
Okay, may I have the microphone?
Yes, you may.
That's easy. Jay, I know, but Jay, a moment ago when you were showing the front elevation and the proposed rooftop addition, I believe you said something like they would be lowering the existing top floor in order to make the rooftop addition somewhat lower, but it was not this slide, it was a different one. And that was confusing to me. It wasn't this one either. Wasn't that one either? There are only a few.
Yeah.
Because it did not look as, I didn't understand the part about lowering the existing top floor. Oh, maybe it was this one, because the cornice appears to remain uniform with the neighbors. So what was that about lowering the existing top floor to accommodate a lower, or to
That would be the roof itself behind the cornice.
behind the cornice? So the cornice remains
The cornice
the same.
remains level.
Okay.
The rooftop addition is approximately level with the ones that are already existing on either side.
Would you like the microphone back?
Okay.
Good.
We did have, I don't know if here's that, we did have a letter from, I believe it was this neighbor. Yeah, you're right. From the neighbor to the east.
It's the one on the right of that building if it's to the east.
Well, it's to the right from 88.
Yes.
To the left from this, from this view, yes. And they complained about the fact that construction had started without permits, but they were, just for the record, they were mistaken. What they were looking at was the mock-ups of the proposed addition that's required by landmarks to show the boundaries of the proposed addition and the height and the setbacks. Go ahead, Jerry. I think that was really it. They were also proposing solar panels for the roof with a pitch to take advantage of the light. There were some tall, thin windows on the rooftop addition, which we found acceptable. The setback was 10 feet from the front facade, and again, it was not visible at all from 88th Street, and it was 3 feet back from the existing rear facade, which in itself is another 3 feet out, so a total of 6 feet back from the rear yard extension. The resolution, we combined all these elements, and our resolution was to approve the front facade work, the rooftop addition, and the rear yard addition, except for the lower 2 floors, because we felt that the glass expanse, since it's visible from the public way, was too extreme, and we disapproved that portion of the application.
Wait, I have a question here.
Go ahead.
I'm looking on Google Maps, and it doesn't appear that the extensions, the additions on either side of the building are actually there.
Well, trust me, I saw them. Unless Google Map, which I doubt was taken in the historic area.
If
they're there. They're there. Well,
Well,
you're
you can't
looking,
see them from the
you're
street.
looking from 88th, you can't see them.
No, the roof addition.
Yeah, you can't see them from the street.
They're invisible.
There's also a satellite photo that doesn't show.
Could be a bird.
Way back here. It's not flush with the building.
Landmarks sounded off on this yet?
No, and I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
For those of you, for
Yeah,
your
but it looks like
new,
they're flush with the building.
Rich, they're there.
Yeah. May I?
They're there. Trust me, I saw them myself.
Okay, go.
In response to Andrew's question, and as a point of information, especially to some of the newer members, I apologize if I said this before, but after literally a couple of years of negotiation with landmarks, the anomaly of our relation with landmarks is that they meet every Tuesday. We meet one Tuesday a month. So what we were running into in a lot of instances was they were hearing applications before we had a chance to review them at the board level. We finally, with the past chair and the council and the community relations, we negotiated an understanding that if we requested that something scheduled at landmarks be laid over so that the full board could review it, they would honor that request. And in return, what we would give them is not bothering them to lay over every single application, particularly the ones that we felt were routine or non-controversial. Every rooftop and rear yard addition, anything affecting an individual landmark, we request that they lay over. This, in fact, was laid over last week so that the full board can consider it. One of the items on here, in fact, was already on landmarks last week, but that's our understanding, and it's worked pretty well. So the resolution is to approve everything but those lower floor windows.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34.
Opposed?
1.
Abstain? For cause? Okay. The next application is, oh, sorry. The next application is another accessibility ramp. This one is at 227 Riverside Drive and 95th Street. This is a situation where there is an existing accessibility ramp that was installed several years ago without landmarks permit. So it is an application to install a new, actually a new ramp in a different design and to get it approved. Go ahead, Jerry. This is two historical pictures. Okay, so this is a picture of the existing accessibility ramp. As you can see, it's simple concrete, also tubular steel painted black. This is the existing. Next. This is a rendering of the proposed railing. And as you can see, it has an intricate design in three parts, and then it's split by vertical railings. The design matches railings on the north side of the building that are existing. I think that's it. Is that it, Jerry? Okay. So, let me just, yeah. After some discussion, the committee decided that our preference was to have the decorative panels across the entire railings, which would be more consistent with the existing railings on the north side. And also, there was an issue with the elevation of the railing above the sidewalk level. Because when you approach the ramp from the entranceway for accessibility, you couldn't, coming the opposite way from the entrance to the ramp, you really couldn't tell that it was an accessibility ramp. So they agreed to.
Slow, that's why.
Right.
Because of the slope, yeah. So anyway, the applicant agreed to have the railing follow the slope of the ramp so that anyone who needed accessibility coming from either direction would understand that it's an accessibility ramp. We indicated a preference, as I said, for the railing, but we approved it.
Call the question. Favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Okay, those opposed? Any abstaining? One. Any abstaining? Last one.
Okay, last but not least, this was an application to install an awning above the entrance on 100th Street, address 314 West 100th. This is a rendering of the existing front entrance, and this is a rendering of the proposed awning. The problem that they're having is they have this pediment, balcony, whatever, that in bad weather, rain, or when it's ice and snow, it drips and freezes on the steps and creates a hazardous condition. There's nothing there now. And the reason for the unusual shape of the awning, which kind of has these wings on the side, is so that it covers the full expanse of the landing and the steps. So it's mostly a matter of safety. And we felt it was, the sign, as you can see, is just the number and address of the building. We felt it was actually nicely done, and we approved it.
Question? Favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Any opposed? Any no? Any abstaining?
Oops.
We have two new stamp applications, the first of which we disapproved because the applicant did not show up. Kind of like the lottery, you have to be in it to win it. So,
You can combine them. You combine them?
I can combine them if people do not. The second one we did approve.
No, don't, please don't combine them.
Okay. Question is called on number 8.
Disapprove.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34.
So they get another chance.
Against? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? No one? Ron?
Did she announce the vote? We usually do that.
It's 34010. We're missing a vote. So we need to
Okay.
have
Okay.
a-
All right, and the next one is an approval of the newsstand. We checked out the operation, the lights, the storage materials, everything seems fine, so it's a resolution to approve.
Discussion?
Clary has a question.
No, I don't. I have a statement.
There you go.
Thank you. So I haven't, when we've had newsstands, we haven't had a lot of them recently. I haven't not, and I'm not sure we've had any to approve a new one recently. But what I have said from time to time, and I'd like to say, because I know we have some new board members who may not have, be familiar with this issue, is while there's a funny set of laws that govern newsstands, and they go way back and have to do with veterans and the state law and stuff that isn't important to this immediate thing I want to say, but what newsstands, as you all know, sell very little news these days. It's very difficult. Well, they don't sell a lot of newspapers compared to what they did in the past.
Where do you get your newspaper? I'm sorry.
Linda, may I finish what I'm saying? They don't sell a lot of newspapers compared to how they sold newspapers in the past. What they've been allowed to do increasingly is to sell drinks and tchotchkes and other things. There used to be a $5 limit. I think there's a $10 limit now. It's been on my to-do list for some time to sort of research all of the latest, and I'm not sure they've changed recently, regulations on newsstands. But one thing they do sell and make a fair percentage of their revenue from is cigarettes. They don't usually display them, they're under the counter, but it's an important piece of their business. Now, we are leasing pieces of our public sidewalk to newsstand owners to conduct these businesses for again, I need to find the current dollars, but it's very little dollars for a piece of public sidewalk, and then there's a modest additional fee to sell cigarettes, and I think it's a city fee, not a state fee. So we are licensing people to use our very scarce and important sidewalks to sell a product that you can't sell on city land or city facilities anywhere else, that causes, and we don't have to talk about it in detail, tons and tons of health problems. First-hand smoke, people who smoke, second-hand smoke, etc. And then at the other end of the process, when people have respiratory and cancer and other problems, many of our citizens end up being paid for by New York City on the health end of things. And of course, not only, as Ken has reminded me, not only is selling cigarette products banned in stadiums and things like that on city land, but smoking is banned in the parks, but not on the streets. Anyway, this is something that's little known in our and little discussed historically in our consideration of newsstands. But to me, the fact that what they're really doing is, for the most part, not selling newspapers, although I'm glad to hear that Linda is sustaining at least one stand by buying hers there. Many don't have enough. Well, we disagree about that, Linda. But I'm urging people not to support new newsstands, because I believe that it is a bad public policy to place new newsstands on public property, scarce resources of our sidewalks,
the whole point of a meeting.
where what they're in business to do, among other things, but a substantial portion of their business is to sell cigarettes.
A question
No, sure. No, people have.
for either one of you. Do we know when we consider these if a particular newsstand is going to sell cigarettes? Of course we do.
Most of them.
I mean, do you ask?
We ask the kinds of things they will be selling. They sell soft drinks, they sell cigarettes, they sell papers, they sell magazines. The point, to Clary's point, and not to belabor this because it's getting late, until the law is changed, and I have no problem with our committee bringing a resolution to the city council, to our city council members, to ask for a change in the law. But until it's changed, if we say no to every newsstand, we will not have a say in where they are cited, because they will just get approved without us. So I have no problem
I
with
don't
Clary's.
disagree. I just wondering if we knew in any given case whether.
We ask
So
the
we
applicants the
we
kinds
should
of things
assume
they
that
will
they
be
do.
selling. And I am sure, to Clary's point, they do make money selling cigarettes.
Okay.
They are not visible, and so, you know, you'd have to know they have them to ask for them, but I am sure they're selling them.
Okay.
Rich, want to pass this to Rich?
We'll try. Is it gonna go that way? Yes.
I want to thank Clary for bringing this up. I've been either voting against or abstaining from newsstands for this very reason. And it's not just cigarettes, it's also, you know, name a vice, they sell them. Lottery tickets, sugar water, candy. They're actually banned by law from selling fresh fruit. So they can only sell packaged, unhealthy goods. And there's definitely no shortage of retail space in our neighborhood. We have so many vacant storefronts. I think that there's a bigger issue. I think we do need to address the issue on a citywide level of, you know, should there be newsstands on our street? Should we be renting out space on the sidewalks, likely in high traffic areas, which is where they're going to want to be?
We'll put it on the transportation committee agenda. It's a great point. We need to consider it outside the context of this individual applicant.
Right.
Good, but that's why I'm going to be
Okay, it's going to be
abstaining
on
as
the
I did in
agenda.
committee.
Call the question.
Call the question.
I think there's a couple of.
Those in
okay.
favor? We're going to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
Sorry.
16,
Sorry.
17,
You're very unpersuasive.
18,
So is that-
19, 20, 21,
What's that?
22, 23.
Closed cafes, not as a matter of board policy. Opposed?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3.
Abstain.
So 4. So 23,
Just do
7,
that.
4.
Okay. So let's move on to number 10. And number 10 is a bundle of potential business operations for SLA licenses. 768 Amsterdam Avenue and 955 West End Avenue. 768 Amsterdam Avenue is guacamole, what we call guacamole taco. It's a business that we support and we like, but they have not been able to come to us properly prepared to present their application. So because of that, we were forced to disapprove it. And they can come back to us next month with the and present those properties.
I'm here for the applicant, and I've spoken to the office, and they told my client to come back today to present his proposal. I spoke to Mr. Martinez.
Yes, we didn't get that name.
I spoke to him last week. I sent this letter to him. You know, he told me to come today with. So
I'm sure it was today,
Yeah,
or
it
not
was-
next week at our committee meeting.
He told me, okay. I thought he said before, so I spoke to him. He said, because basically, I think one of the problems was my client came in, he didn't understand English. So he came in, he wasn't prepared. Then I called your office to ask what he should bring, and he said that I didn't really need to bring anything, I had to bring my client, or somebody who spoke English.
But yes, but the problem is that part of the process is like having the notice of the community to be able to attend the meeting and present their opinion also.
So I already sent another 30-day notice, or I sent it
You have to come to the committee meeting next week.
next week?
As to the 30-day notice, with all due respect, talk to Mr. Martinez and ask him if he can kindly send Jerry and I a copy of what was sent to you. Vis-a-vis the 30-day.
I have a first copy of what I sent to him for everybody here, maybe it's now.
I would,
That's why, I'll talk to Ms. Lopez.
yeah, because he's not here and he has. He's not here. So with the application, we're asking you to disapprove it, and they are, I believe they're on the agenda for our committee meeting next week. This will be maybe the 5th or 4th attempt. But we're available. We'll be there. Our whole committee will be there with bells on. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, talking about 955.
Yes, then 955 Western Avenue, the Mocha Lounge. This venue has had a lot of opposition from the residents of the area, from the community, basically because they made too much noise. And they were operating illegally. For many years, they were operating outside the bounds of their SLA license. More recently, they were fined by the SLA, and they were forced to go back to cut down their hours back to midnight. They're supposed to operate either as a bookstore or as a coffee shop with that serves alcohol with no music.
No music and closing at midnight.
Right. So
They have not done that for many years.
So for many years they have, and even once they were fined, they were still in violation of their license. They have never gone back to conform within their existing license. So mostly because of the opposition of the community, we have disapproved this application.
Dan, you want to say something?
Now,
You kind of said it.
Okay.
I could add, but I think we'll probably be here again next month.
Yeah, they're going to be in front of the committee next week again with another attempt to change their method of operation.
No ownership.
so all those in favor?
Is the disapproval of both?
Yeah.
Yes.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Opposed?
Okay. Abstaining? Not eligible to vote? Okay, so moving on. 11. Yes?
I have a letter I sent into the board that really goes into an extensive history on 955, lounge, and underground, West End, et cetera. Yeah, I hope after our next meeting, if that can be distributed, we can come to the next meeting to the other board members, and we'll have an extensive history of this going into the next time.
Yeah, it's an interesting zoning issue.
Yes.
They're able to squeak in on it and have the liquor license.
Okay. Right.
Underground.
Okay, number 11. These are new applications to the SLA for 2-year on-premises liquor licenses. We're going to split out this group 305 Western Avenue. We're going to make that a separate vote on number 17 on your tally sheet for 305 Western Avenue, and we'll split in a moment. So for 513 Amsterdam Avenue and 505 Columbus Avenue, there were no complaints, no oppositions to these licenses. So we are voted to approve them. All in favor?
Wait,
No, question?
I'm sorry, what is it at West End and 74th that's a commercial?
Oh, we will talk about it in a minute. Yeah,
It's being split out of the vote.
That's not part of the vote. We're only voting on 513 Amsterdam and 505 Columbus now.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, thank you. And it's punch the picker. P-I-C-K-L-A.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
I don't make
7,
a
8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
That's
13, 14, 15,
Jacob's
16,
pickle
17, 18, 19,
I assume
20,
that
21,
should be
22,
like
23,
this.
24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34.
Against? Abstaining? Okay.
So 3400.
Okay, so 305 Western Avenue. This is an adult facility where they want to be able to serve alcohol to the residents of the adult facility and the visitors. Now, we originally approved this application, and we later we learned from a DOB that this is they don't have as of right on the use group 2 to have a liquor license. It is they have to get DOB approval for that first. So so right now we're going to disapprove the application because it has to be pending on DOB approval before we can vote on it.
Pardon me?
We're going to put on 17.
It's gonna be 17.
It's gonna be 17.
So under 17, do it 305 West End Avenue.
So they can't get the license until
Yeah, the
DOB.
SLA won't be able to consider the license unless DOB approves.
Could we approve it subject to DOB?
No.
No, we cannot.
SLA won't even look at the
All those
application.
in favor of
In fact, I think they did not submit, I know they did not submit the application to SLA.
So senior.
It was the Esplanade. Was it sold?
Yes, I think so.
Abstaining?
No, abstaining.
Abstaining one?
32110.
32110. Number 12.
Number 12, 2175 Broadway is a new application for only closed sidewalk cafe. There were no positions to this, and we approved it. Any questions?
We'll take all the questions.
Okay, all the questions, all those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 14, 15, 16,
there's an unenclosed in the front.
29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Stay in place.
Okay, don't put your coats on. We have one item of new business, and I just want to explain what's happening. So according to our bylaws, you can propose an amendment to the bylaws. It has to be proposed the month prior to the month on which it's voted. So Ken Conklin has a proposal to amend the bylaws. He is allowed to read it tonight, but because we cannot vote until next month, we are holding the discussion until next month.
Excuse me? Oh, I don't mean to interrupt you, Richard, Roberta. Finish your sentence.
I finished.
Okay, then I have a point of order on what you just said. What Ken's amendment, regardless of how it may ultimately be resolved, involves a very central issue to our board and our operations. And the last provision in our bylaws, which requires that a bylaw amendment, proposed bylaw amendment, may not be voted on the month it's introduced. But that's the only thing that is restricted. It does not restrict discussion at the time it's introduced. I believe, as a point of order, that probably the reason for the 1 month delay, because bylaw amendments are so important and central to, in our bylaws, to our operations, is to permit people not to make rash decisions and to cogitate about the issue for a month. There may be other reasons as well, but the last section, which requires the vote be deferred, does not in any way require that discussion be deferred. And I would suggest in my point of order that a certain amount of discussion in terms of introducing and discussing the issues and laying out the issues at this meeting is not only not prohibited by the bylaws, but is what should happen.
I'm going to give a brief explanation of the bylaws. So the bylaws there was a year and a half of the task force, bylaws task force met for a year and a half looking at the bylaws, and at the conclusion in December of 2012, the task force presented there were 9 people on the task force. Each item, each section was written into English, was voted on, was vetted, was discussed. At the end of the period of time, the committee unanimously, the task force unanimously approved the bylaws. The bylaws were then presented to the full board at the December 2012 full board meeting. At that meeting, it was actually Mel Wymore suggested an amendment to the proposed bylaw that there should be term limits for committee co-chairs, which would end in 6 years. The vote at that meeting, I believe, was 28 to 8 to 0. The bylaws were then voted by the full board in February of 2013, and they passed close to unanimous. I think there may have been a couple of votes against at that point. So for the last 2 years since I've been chairs, I've been telling committee co-chairs that term limits were coming and that they should start looking for replacements. We have changed some of the chairs over the years. So during this month, no, it's during in November, we discussed for over an hour the bylaws, specifically term limits for co-chairs. And the discussion could have gone for another 2 hours if we let everyone say the same thing twice. But basically, everybody in the room got to speak at least once, and a few people got to speak twice. So in discussion with the executive committee and some of the other people, we talked about having a discussion tonight and voting at the January meeting, which didn't seem fair because not everybody who's going to be at the January meeting necessarily is here tonight. I know of at least 3 or 4 people who could not make the meeting. One is traveling, several others have colds. So it was our feeling that it would be fair to have a general discussion at the meeting at which we vote, rather than having the same discussion two nights in a row. So I'm going to let Ken read his resolution, and then we are going to have a lengthy discussion at the January 2nd board meeting.
Could I just suggest that we have one after Ken presents some questions about the meaning of his resolution and implications, so we know what we're thinking about.
Okay, why don't we spend 10 minutes after that? We'll spend 10 minutes, so Ken, you have.
Like questions of fact kind of thing, as opposed
Yeah,
to?
so Ken is going to speak until 10 minutes after. We'll stay here until 20 minutes after.
I'll try to fill up the time. The problem with what we passed in 2013 is that it was one sentence long. It was very vaguely drafted. One thing it didn't say was how long a term limited chair would have to step aside. Would it be a day, a week, a year, 2 years? It was silent on that. The other problem was that it made no provisions for what is going to happen, which is that.
Excuse me, you're supposed to read your resolution.
Go ahead.
We can read it.
I think that the board members, every board member knows how to read. So I'm just going to characterize the resolution. The other problem is that 7 of our senior leaders, most senior committee leadership, is going to be retired simultaneously. 2 committees are going to completely lose their chairs entirely, preservation and land use, with no obvious person to step in to the role as chair. So what I proposed accomplishes 3 things. One is that it provides that what the term will be that a chair has to step aside, and that's 1 year. Number 2, it offers a mechanism for committee chairs for continuity for committee chairs, so that no committee chair would be term limited unless their co-chair has served as a co-chair for at least 3 years. And then finally, it makes it impossible for both chairs of a committee to be term limited simultaneously, and has provisions for what to do in that case, which would apply to land use currently. So I think it strikes the balance between the impetus behind term limits, which is to inject new energy into our committee leadership. But we also want to be mindful of preserving experience and continuity, and so I think it accomplishes both those things. That's what it attempts to do.
All right, it's now 10 after 9, at 20 after we stop the discussion. So the longer you speak means somebody else can't speak.
Ken, am I correct that the amendment you're offering is not intended to supersede the power of the chair to replace committee chairs at any time?
No.
No, I'm not correct?
You are correct.
Thank you. That was pretty short. Mark?
Come around.
I might propose a friendly amendment that if there's only 1 chair and you're saying that they wouldn't be term limited, that the board chair would have to appoint a co-chair. So that way, one person doesn't stay on forever with no co-chair and no chair apparent.
Nice. Nice save.
Chair with an E.
I can talk about, so I just wanted to ask, can I ask just 2 factual questions? Yep, one is just, who was on the board at the time the term limits vote was taken? If people could raise their hands, I just want to get a quick sense. Because I think there are a lot of people who are new to the board who may not remember that it has been over 6 years since co-chairs have known that there has been a need for a changeover at some point. So I think that's an important thing for all board members to know, that when this went into effect, there have been succession plans that have been able to be put in place for the last 6 years for committee chairs. My second question was just for people who are, I'd like to just get a sense of if in January we could make sure we have whatever is coming from the borough president's office on term members extensions for term limits, if there's any closure or any developments on that front, if that could also be presented at the January discussion in addition to the committee chairs. So I think that's important.
What we've heard so far, Elizabeth, on that, which is a good point. And we don't know until here whether the city council's charter revision commission is going to discuss term limits or not. But the term limits for people appointed April 2019 will serve for 8 years. People appointed in 2020 will serve for 10 years. So having a committee chair for 6 years might become academic anyway. All right, take a few more points. Shelley and then Sue.
First, on the last point, doesn't mean someone's going to be appointed for 8 years. It could potentially be appointed.
They could be appointed for 2 years.
Right, so that whole proposal on ballot was not to end people's terms. I think that whereas certainly the chair's prerogative to choose and to retire people from the position of chair of a committee is not to be questioned, but I think that Ken's attempt here, I think, is a very thoughtful attempt, will, and if passed, will be guidance for the chair in the way things could be handled. And I think this is why this is an important resolution to be considered and amended. I think I want to thank Ken because I know many people, I wasn't at steering, but I know many people were very disturbed about various things and had different feelings. This isn't about feelings. This is about how can our board work and function well, given that we have many very talented people who will be term limited. And I think we need to give a lot of thought of how to, if we're keeping the, and modifying it this way, how to use and honor the resources of the people who are given tremendous amount of time and have expertise that is far beyond most people on the board and most people in the community. So I want to thank him.
Additionally, if the mayor's term limits go into effect, most of the community boards in Manhattan are thinking of revising their bylaws to reflect what a committee board would look like with people that can only stay on for 8 years and then have to go off for 2 years. So if the mayor's charter revision stands, we may have to start looking at bylaws changes.
So, this is on, yeah. Point of clarification, chairs who are term limited out, is there any reason they cannot stay on the committee as a committee member? So there's no question of losing the expertise or that institutional history. It's just a matter of who gets to wield that theoretical gavel. Okay.
I guess we're having a discussion. Oh my God, just a quick one. Just in case somebody.
Just factually speaking, on the issue of the 2 chairs, how many committees, do we know how many committees would be affected by that specific?
7.
7 persons.
Only one has two chairs who would go together.
6 committees, 7 people.
But also preservation has 1 chair.
Does anyone else have a question? Clary?
I think this, as I understand it, Ken's amendments, as I understand it, whatever people thought, those who did vote for the 6-year term limit in 2012 and 13, whatever they may have had in mind, the actual bylaw that has been in front of us for the last 6 years does not contain any minimal hiatus for a chair, a committee chair. So that under the bylaw as it exists right now, and were it not amended, it would be possible for each committee chair who is served for 6 years to have a hiatus of a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and Roberta could reappoint them. She has, however, indicated that she does not intend to do that, absent an amendment such as Ken's or any other amendment. There are people who believe there should be no term limits for committee members. There are people who believe there should be term limits of some sort. What Ken's amendment does, and I don't think he made this quite clear, is that it actually builds in the 1-year hiatus, as to which the current language is silent. But at the same, and that's maybe what some people at least thought they were voting for in 2013, although that's not what they got. But at the same time, and I again applaud him, as Shelley does, for doing this, it provides a mechanism for continuity and for not losing. And I'm one of them. Jay's one of them. There's Richard, Paige, Madge, Michelle, and there's one other, I think. For not losing, and Andrew. Andrew, since time immemorial, has been our co-chair of his committee since before even I was on the board. So it provides a method for not a means of not simultaneously sending us all into retirement at the same moment, aside from how that would impact our community.
Are we having a discussion?
No, that's all I wanted to say.
I would just like to say one last, excuse me.
I have to get back my salary.
We're going to adjourn in a minute, but to clarify, at the 2012 full board meeting, the resolution never got fully put into the bylaws correctly. The resolution was 6 years and then a 1-year hiatus. And somehow when it got translated into the bylaws, the 1-year hiatus then got taken out. Anyway, everybody, holiday party on the 18th. Happy New Year, happy holidays, and see you all soon.